We have a crisis going on within the car industry, particularly the fact that engines are now disposable items. Years ago, we used to be able to strip down an engine, replace the components, and you'd have an engine that was often better than it came out of the factory. But today, that is certainly not always the case. And in this video, we're just going to see what's significantly changed within the industry and why we are now having to replace engines rather than repair them. Firstly, manufacturing costs and efficiency have driven up the complexity of engines. The manufacturing tolerances that are needed to produce an engine that meets emission standards is much more exacting than it used to be many years ago. And many manufacturers have actually started using special coatings on the cylinder walls, exotic materials, and the parts they use are produced and machined to very fine tolerances. And most of that is done to meet these emission standards, but cars are very much assembled now in factories. There's a lot of automation going on. And we have to know that many modern manufacturers do not sell rebuild kits. They only sell replacement engines. Years ago, an engine typically used to be a cast iron block, and there was a lot you could do to that. As the engine started to wear, you could fit new piston rings and hone the cylinder wall. But now with the engines that come with exotic coatings or liners, that becomes almost impossible to do economically. I think I have to acknowledge that anything is possible, but it's usually not economically viable to do so. Or getting the tools and the specialist knowledge to machine things to such high tolerances is just going to outweigh any benefits that you get from having that work done in the first place. If we can't buy the components and we can't remachine the engine block and other components in the engine to help us repair it, what's the option? Well, we've got to go out and replace the engine, but there is a sensible thing that all of us can do to take better care of our cars. Servicing the car more regularly than the manufacturer states is something that a lot of our viewers have actually expressed in the comments. It's something they do regularly. And service recommendations from manufacturers at 9,000 miles is cut in half by many people. And changing the oil more frequently does have longevity benefits and reduces the wear and tear on the engine and components that it contains. It's fair to say though that some engines and some engine designs are worse than others. There are still engines that we can work on, that we can do fairly major work on, but there are other engines that is just not worth playing with. You just chuck the engine away and replace it. The Jaguar Land Rover 2-litre Ingenium engine has often been criticised as being very challenging to maintain, particularly as the mileage goes up. It's often dogged by problems, as many modern engines are, with timing chains stretching, oil dilution issues, and diesel particulate filter issues. Volkswagen's EA888 or EA888 or EA888, the 2-litre engine that was quite common in a lot of Volkswagen Group cars, so that obviously includes Audi, Seat and Skoda. The early ones had problems with high oil consumption and excessive wear on the cam lobes and the cam followers. Peugeot and Citroen's PureTech engines are often slated as being challenging to maintain, but this is often what we get when you have a tiny engine with forced induction. It's doing a lot more work. There's a lot more scope for things to go wrong inside that engine. A lot of the Hyundai and Kia models do not have rebuild kits available for them, meaning you have to replace the whole engine rather than source components. We could go on with the Peugeot, Citroen, BMW and Mini engine. The Prince versions also had quite a few problems attached to them. They typically had timing problems and turbo issues. Tensioner wear and carbon buildup were all problems on these engines, and they're quite challenging to work on. And I would personally avoid any engine that has a wet timing belt. These are also dogged with problems and can be very challenging to maintain, and the belts are very prone to sudden and dramatic failure at points in their lifespan. Generally though, even these unreliable engines can be improved if we up the service, if we service them more regularly, if we look after them, we allow them to enjoy a complete heat cycle every time we use them. The chances of them failing on on us will be substantially reduced. It's worth doing our homework, finding out what the weak spot is in our particular engine that we have, and just trying to mitigate that with extra care, extra attention, or keeping an eye on it, catching those problems early on. If you've enjoyed this video, please boot that like button. That does help us to get out there. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please do so. And I've lined up this video and this playlist that you should find really interesting. Thanks for watching. See you in these next videos.